What's up, guys? This is Dan with The Roofing Artist, and today we're going to talk about flat roofing systems. So there's a lot to cover there. It's a completely different ball game from sloped systems, but it's absolutely required for situations where you have a slope less than 212. So there's a few different types of flat roofing systems. The first that's the most common, I would say, on residential applications is mod bit. So the reason why mod bit's more popular on residential is just that it costs a little bit less. So you're not necessarily looking to, solve the problem for, 40 years or whatever. You're just looking to have your kind of back patio done and something that's going to last for 25 years. Mod bit is a 2-ply system, so there is a base sheet and then a cap sheet that goes over top to it, over top of it, and they just sort of seal together. It's very resilient. It's very thick. You can walk on it easily without damaging it. And it's a good system as far as a cost-effective solution that's better than shingles, because you don't want to put shingles on a flat roofing situation. And it's also not as expensive as some of the higher end options that you would want for a commercial building like TPO, EPDM, and that kind of thing. Which leads me to the other two, which are TPO, which is sort of it's made of plastic. It's not what you might think of as plastic, but it's a thin sheet that comes 3 feet wide, and it's that if you see it on commercial buildings, that really white material that's just sort of laid out on the entire roofing system. That's TPO, and it's really effective. It's a 1-ply system typically, and you can secure that either by mechanical fasteners, so literally screwing plates down into the material and then lapping it over top, or a self-adhered system, which is basically tarring down the area and then allowing the tar to sort of do the work of sealing the material to the roof. And then EPDM is very similar to TPO. It's a rubber material instead of plastic. It's typically black, and it's just thicker, so it's more resilient to if you have tree coverage and stuff like that. It's going to be able to handle the odd limb, branch and stuff like that falling down on it better than TPO might, where it might puncture a little easier. TPO is typically great for nice open expansive spaces where you're not really worried about stuff hanging overhead, and EPDM is a little more resilient, although it's not quite as effective in terms of energy efficiency, considering it's a black material and thicker. So TPO is better for energy efficiency. EPDM is better if you need something that's a little more thick, that's going to cover a lot of space. I also wanted to mention tar and gravel. Tar and gravel is a little out of style these days. There's not a whole lot of it going on, but it was a very common system, from the 1950s kind of on. It's kind of fading out now. You really don't find too much that's going to be going back with tar and gravel. If we find a tar and gravel roof, typically we're going to have to tear all that up, and we're going to replace it with something more efficient like TPO, for example. And also honorable mention to standing seam. Standing seam isn't typically what you might think of when it comes to flat roofing material, but it is effective for smaller areas. If you have like a porch, cabana, pergola, that kind of thing. Something where you just need to cover a little bit of space. You want it to look aesthetically nice, but you're not worried about, covering a commercial building or whatever, where it would be very, very expensive to do so. So why should you consider flat roofing? So flat roofing is going to be required for anything that is a 212 slope and above. So that's basically like a 10-degree angle. So anything that is about that slope or lower, you're going to want to look at flat roofing material. If you install shingles on anything that low, it'll actually void the manufacturer warranty, and they won't provide coverage on that, just because shingles aren't intended for that type of application. Considering shingles are 3 feet wide, so you've got gaps every 3 feet. With flat roofing, the water tends to just sit in one place. For the most part, there is sloping and stuff like that, but it's much more gradual. So you're going to get a lot of water just sitting there, where there's going to be gaps in those shingles, so it's not going to be able to properly drain the water as you need it. It's required for anything 212 and under, basically. You can get away with shingles sometimes if there's like a bit of a pitch on it, but you're going to want to double ice and water underneath the material, the shingle material. to make sure that there's proper coverage underneath the shingles, because there will be moisture that gets through shingles if it's installed on too low a slope. Another thing I wanted to mention as far as just sort of the overall flat roofing industry, if you're looking at certainly a bigger commercial building, you're often going to want to have isoboard put down underneath it. That's going to stabilize the material as well as provide insulation to the building, and also you're going to sort of taper off that material to facilitate drainage towards the drains. So it's effective that way. So that's one thing that you're going to want to think of in terms of more of a commercial context. So the flat roofing is very widely used for both residential and commercial. As I said, for residential, typically you're going to find mod bit being the more common application, just because again, it's somewhat cheaper compared to the other options. It's very effective, and you're not looking to cover a wide range of space. So mod bit's typically going to be very effective there. You might find situations where TPO might be your best option. I did do TPO on a residential roof last year, where it was just sort of the top of the house was essentially a flat roof, and so we did it on that context just because we were looking to cover a larger space. And we just torched down the seams to make sure that everything was nice and sealed tight. One big thing to be aware of when it comes to flat roofing is 2-ply versus 1-ply systems. So there's no real downside to either one, but typically with a 2-ply system, you're putting down a base sheet and a cap sheet, and then just allowing the materials themselves to adhere. Whereas with a 1-ply system, you're taking a little bit of extra precaution in terms of how you're securing that 1-ply to the roof deck. So like I said, either mechanically fastened or self-adhered, where you're actually laying down tar and then torching the seams to make sure that it's all secured properly. So some pros for flat roofing. It's good for slow drainage situations where you're going to get a lot of water kind of pooling, and the water needs to be able to sit there for a while. It's going to be fairly resilient to like hail damage and branches and stuff like that falling on it, and particularly TPO is going to be better in terms of energy efficiency than shingles would be, for example. The cons would be that it is more expensive than shingles. It's not quite as expensive as like standing seam, but it's kind of right there in the middle. So if you have a flat roofing application, expect to pay more per square than you would for shingles. And another downside is that it is naturally going to be in situations where you're going to have water pooling, so expect that there could be some situations where water does sit there for a while, which can propagate leaks if there is an issue with the install or the material in the future. So that's kind of a basic rundown of kind of just an overview of flat roofing materials. And so I hope you have found that helpful. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments and we'll get back to you, and have a good one.